"If you can afford the worst room, I'll give you the suite," scoffed the manager, unaware of who the black woman who had just entered the lobby of the prestigious Grand Metropolitan Hotel in Manhattan really was. Elena Rodriguez, 34, had spent the last 15 minutes being systematically ignored at the front desk, while white guests who arrived after her were promptly attended to. What should have been a simple check-in had turned into a public display of discrimination. But Elena did not explode. She remained there with a calmness that baffled manager Robert Clark, a 45-year-old man who had dedicated his career to maintaining the standard of the most exclusive hotel in the region. "Ma'am, our rooms cost at least $1,000 a night," Robert said, deliberately raising his voice. "Perhaps you'd be better off looking for something more affordable in the area." The suggestion was made with studied cruelty, accompanied by a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Around them, some guests stopped to watch the awkward scene. Elena had witnessed the same energy 3 days earlier when she called to make the reservation. The attendant's voice had changed completely after discovering her name. Suddenly, there were no rooms available. That's why she decided to show up in person. $1,000 is no problem," Elena replied simply. "I would like the best room available." Robert let out an unpleasant laugh. "You understand that we need guarantees, right? Premium credit card, proof of income, bank references." Each word was pronounced like an insurmountable barrier. That's when Robert decided to cross a dangerous line. "You know what? If you can pay cash for our worst room, $400, I'll personally give you our presidential suite for free." The cruel proposal provoked uncomfortable murmurs among those present. Elena smiled for the first time. It was not a smile of embarrassment, but something that made Robert Bachenard feel an inexplicable chill. $400 cash for the worst room," Elena repeated calmly. "And if I succeed, I get the presidential suite for free." "Exactly," Robert replied. "But when you fail, I hope you use the back exit." What Robert didn't know was that Elena had recorded the entire conversation on her cell phone, discreetly placed on the counter. Elena calmly walked over to the nearest leather sofa and sat down, placing her purse on her lap. "What do you think you're doing?" Robert asked. "You can't just sit there as if you own the place." "I'm organizing my documents for payment," Elena replied, opening her purse with deliberately slow movements. $400 in cash. "Isn't that what you said?" The entire reception area stopped to watch. Robert felt the first tightness in his chest. During 15 years of managing luxury hotels, he had developed an infallible radar for identifying who belonged. But Elena didn't fit into any category he knew. She didn't show nervousness or anger, just a tranquility that was beginning to make Robert wonder if he had underestimated something important. "Look," a guest whispered, "the manager is clearly being prejudiced against her." Elena took a neat envelope and a leather wallet out of her purse. 3 years earlier, she had experienced a similar situation at a restaurant in Los Angeles. At the time, she had left without making a fuss, swallowing the humiliation. But much had changed in 3 years, especially after her consulting firm began to grow exponentially. "Ma'am," said Robert, approaching, "I cannot allow you to turn our reception area into your personal waiting room." "Mr. Clark, I read your name on your badge. I am preparing to pay the $400 in cash for the worst room. Or were you lying about the bet?" The question cut through the air. Robert realized he had put himself in a delicate situation. "Of course I wasn't lying," he replied, forcing a confident smile. "But our worst room is still superior to most hotels that people like you usually frequent." The comment provoked more uncomfortable murmurs. "People like me," Elena repeated. "And what kind of people am I, Mr. Clark?" Robert opted to change tactics. "Cash payments require additional verification, anti-fraud policies." "Of course," Elena agreed, taking her cell phone out. "I can call my bank to confirm the legitimacy of the funds, or would you prefer that I contact my attorney to document this entire process?" The mention of an attorney made Robert gulp. "No, that won't be necessary," he muttered. Elena stood up, walked over to the front desk, and placed the envelope on the marble counter. $400, she said simply, as promised. Robert stared at the envelope as if it were a booby trap. His hands trembled as he opened it, revealing bills organized in groups of $50. The money was there, real, countable, irrefutable. But Elena wasn't finished. She took a card out of her wallet and placed it next to the money. "My ID," she said. "Elena Rodriguez, CEO of Rodriguez Strategic Consulting, in case you need to verify my credibility." The impact was immediate. "Rodriguez Strategic, it's one of the most respected consulting firms on the East Coast," one executive whispered. Robert was as white as a sheet. CEO, a word that echoed in his mind like a funeral bell. He had spent 20 minutes publicly humiliating the CEO of a multi-million-dollar company. Robert held the $400 as if it were evidence of a crime. "CEO means nothing these days," he muttered. "Anyone can open a consulting firm and call themselves an executive." His desperate attempt only intensified the murmurs of disapproval. "Rodriguez Strategic isn't just any consulting firm," someone whispered. "They advise some of the largest corporations in the country." "Mr. Clark," Elena said calmly, "now that I've paid as agreed, I'd like to access my presidential suite." Robert let out a nervous laugh. "Look, it was just a joke. The presidential suite costs $3,000 a night. People like you are usually happy with simpler rooms." Elena took her cell phone out with deliberately calm movements. "How interesting. You just broke a publicly made agreement in front of dozens of witnesses." She activated the recording app and showed the screen to Robert. "All properly documented, of course." The blood drained from Robert's face. I didn't exactly say that," he stammered. "Would you like me to play the recording for everyone to hear?" Elena offered. "I'm sure your superiors will be interested." Then something unexpected happened. The elevator opened and out stepped a man in his 40s, impeccably dressed, carrying a leather briefcase. "Elena Rodriguez," he said, walking directly toward her with a warm smile. "What a surprise to find you here." James Thompson, how are you?" Elena turned and her face lit up with genuine recognition. "Thompson and Associates," a lady whispered. "Isn't he that famous lawyer who was on CNN last week?" Robert felt as if the world was conspiring against him. First a CEO, now a famous lawyer treating Elena like an old friend. "Elena, I'm here for the Civil Rights Conference at the Convention Center," James explained. "I didn't know you'd be in town." "I came to take care of some business," Elena replied, casting a meaningful glance in Robert's direction. "Unfortunately, I'm experiencing some difficulties with the local hospitality." James followed her gaze and immediately sensed the tension. "What kind of difficulties?" he asked, his voice taking on the professional tone that made opponents tremble in court. "Mr. Clark here made a bet with me. If I could pay $400 cash for the worst room, he would give me the presidential suite for free." "And?" James encouraged. "I paid. He's refusing to honor the agreement." James turned to Robert with an expression that made the manager take an involuntary step backward. "Mr. Clark, I'm James Thompson from Thompson and Associates. I'm sure there's some misunderstanding here. Ms. Rodriguez is one of the most respected businesswomen in the country." The mention of Thompson and Associates prompted more murmurs. Robert realized he had gotten himself into a situation far beyond his control. "It's not a question of financial capacity," Robert tried to explain, sweating visibly. "It's just that the presidential suite has certain requirements." "What requirements?" James asked, taking a digital recorder out of his pocket. "Please be specific. For legal purposes." The presence of the recorder made Robert swallow hard. Elena watched the transformation in Robert's behavior and felt deep satisfaction. For years, she had been forced to swallow similar humiliations because she lacked the resources to defend herself. Now the dynamic had completely changed. "Mr. Clark is explaining the specific requirements of the presidential suite to me," Elena said to James, maintaining a perfectly polite tone. James nodded, taking notes. "Retroactive criteria are always interesting from a legal standpoint. Continue, Mr. Clark." Robert realized he had dug himself into such a deep hole that he could no longer see the surface. "Perhaps," Elena suggested softly, "we should resolve this more privately." James put away the tape recorder but kept his notepad visible. Elena has always been reasonable in her negotiations. It's one of the qualities that makes her so respected in the corporate world. "James, you know Mr. Harrison Mills, don't you?" Elena asked casually. "Of course," James replied. "Harrison is the CEO of Mills Hospitality Group. He owns dozens of hotels on the East Coast." The name Harrison Mills made Robert gulp. Mills Hospitality Group was one of the largest hotel chains in the country, known for its zero-tolerance policy on discrimination. "We had dinner together last week," Elena said, taking her cell phone out. "He was telling me about a new consulting project to improve service standards at partner hotels. He spoke specifically about combating discrimination disguised as maintaining standards." Robert felt as if the floor had disappeared beneath his feet. Harrison Mills was known for ending the careers of managers who tarnished the reputation of partner establishments. "In fact," Elena continued, "he asked me to document any instances of discrimination I encountered during my travels. He said he wanted real examples to use in training." Robert looked around desperately. He found only disapproving faces. Then the situation got even worse. The elevator doors opened and an elegant woman in her 50s stepped out. "Elena Rodriguez," the woman exclaimed, flashing a genuine smile. "What a wonderful surprise!" "Sarah Hamilton, how are you?" Elena turned and her face lit up. Robert barely registered the encounter. His brain was trying to process that Sarah Hamilton, regional director of the Mills Hospitality Group, knew Elena personally. "Elena," Sarah said, "I didn't know you frequented the Grand Metropolitan. How has the service been?" The innocent question fell on Robert like a death sentence. "Well," Elena said thoughtfully, "Mr. Clark here made an interesting bet with me. If I could pay $400 cash for the worst room, he would give me the presidential suite for free." Sarah looked at Robert with an expression he recognized immediately. "And what was the outcome?" "I paid," Elena said simply, "but Mr. Clark is explaining why he can't keep his word." Sarah turned to Robert. "Mr. Clark, I sincerely hope there is a very good explanation for what I'm hearing." Robert opened and closed his mouth several times. I'll arrange the suite immediately," he finally muttered. "Now you want to honor the bet?" Elena asked. "How interesting. What has changed in the last 5 minutes, Eve?" Ryan knew exactly what had changed. Robert was only keeping his word because he realized he had humiliated the wrong person in front of the wrong people. Sarah shook her head. "Mr. Clark, I'm going to need to speak with upper management about this incident, and I'm going to need a detailed report." The mention of a report to upper management was the final blow. Robert knew his career at the Grand Metropolitan was over. Elena watched Robert break down and felt deep but not cruel satisfaction. "Mr. Clark," Elena said calmly, "I will accept the presidential suite as per our bet, but I will also make it clear that I did not do this on a personal whim." She turned to the entire reception. "I did it because how many other people are treated this way on a daily basis? How many families, elderly people, young people who don't have the resources I have to defend themselves? Mr. Clark, you didn't just discriminate against me. You revealed a pattern of behavior that likely affects dozens of people who pass through here." The silence was absolute. Elena took out her cell phone and showed the screen for everyone to see. "As I mentioned to Mr. Thompson, I documented our entire interaction." She pressed the play button. Robert's voice echoed clearly. "If you can afford the worst room, I'll give you the suite," followed by his prejudiced comments about people like you, and establishment standards. Sarah Hamilton took the phone and listened to the entire recording, her expression growing more severe. "Mr. Clark," Sarah finally said, "consider yourself formally notified. The Mills Hospitality Group does not partner with establishments that tolerate this type of discriminatory behavior." The sentence was delivered like a final judgment. Robert knew that losing the support of Mills Hospitality Group would mean not only his job, but potentially the end of his career. 6 months later, Elena returned to the Grand Metropolitan for a business conference. The reception area had been completely renovated, a gold plaque near the entrance announced, "Universal Dignity Policy. All guests are treated with equal respect regardless of appearance or origin." Maria, now the official manager, greeted her with a genuine smile. "Ms. Rodriguez, it's an honor to have you with us again. Your suite is ready." "How are things going around here?" Elena asked. "Much better," Maria replied. "We've implemented monthly training on unconscious bias. The hotel has never had such high ratings." Sarah Hamilton appeared in the lobby. "I hear Robert is working as a receptionist at a roadside motel in the countryside," she commented discreetly. "Apparently, no quality hotel wants to hire him after what happened." Elena nodded thoughtfully. She took no pleasure in Robert's suffering, but she understood that consequences were necessary for real change. That evening, during her speech at the conference, Elena shared her experience. Discrimination thrives because people never face real consequences. Change only happens when prejudice has a price. Her company had grown 200% in the last year, with contracts from large corporations seeking inclusion consulting, many motivated by the story that had gone viral. Robert had learned the hard way that underestimating someone based on appearance can cost you everything. Elena proved that the best response to prejudice is not anger, but success so great that it forces the world to recognize your value.